subscribers. Hey
Thank you.
everyone, I'm trying to get Cy Cantrell a lot more subscribers. Cy is the author of Abstract Machine on Substack. She calls herself a feral scholar because she's out in the wild, not affiliated, which might actually be the best, which allows her to be independent. She is a media studies scholar. She studied media theory. She's literally spent the last decade on tech culture. All this means is that everything that's happening online, the crypto bros, the shit posting, the red pill, black pill, accelerationism, nihilist violent extremist movements. She knows it. The engravings on the bullets that were found, all those memes, Groypers. She knows it. And then in Psy, I stumbled upon an 8 minute, I think, TikTok video that Psy did,
Mhm.
staring right in the camera, and she gave this masterclass breaking down what's happening online. And it isn't the left-right binary.
No.
It isn't your daddy's right-wing extremism or left-wing extremism. I was even telling Sai, I've been in this space for a while, following Islamophobia, the replacement theory, and this is new shit even for me. And so what we know right now, Sai, and we're don't worry, folks, we're gonna break it down because as an 8-year-old, I'm gonna ask questions of Sai, and she'll probably be like, "All right, Waj, let me explain it to you as a child." What we know so far, Tyler Robinson is the sole shooting suspect in Charlie Kirk. What we know so far is that he's a 22-year-old white man, comes from a gun-loving, Trump voting conservative Mormon good family in Utah. What we know so far is that he's the only suspect who killed Charlie Kirk. What we know so far, according to what the FBI has released, and again, we'll talk about this is why you need competent leadership in the FBI, because when you don't have competent leadership and when you have people politicizing the FBI, that's when you get the confusion that is right now, because no one, even the right wing, does not believe what the FBI right now. But what we know so far, we'll just say with facts, folks, try to be responsible, is that Tyler Robinson was apparently, allegedly, in a relationship with a man, his roommate, and he hated what Charlie Kirk was saying against transgender LGBTQ people, and that's what tipped him off. And then the text exchanges between him and his lover. He admitted to doing it. He also, all the engravings that were on the bullets, to him, it was just memes. And he wanted to just put memes out there. His mom said that he was moving more towards the left, but the only side proof of that is then she followed up and said he was more pro gay. And what I've been trying to say real quick before I hand it over to Sai, who's going to break down all of this, is just because you're gay doesn't mean you're left. Just because you're pro LGBT doesn't mean you are progressive. Whole bunch of open and closeted people in the MAGA movement. But we know he's a white man, loved guns, pro Second Amendment, apparently became more pro LGBT. His friends say he had no real ideology, mostly apolitical. It's a lot of time spent online, and was pissed off at Charlie Kirk. Used some language that is associated in the online cultures, also by Groypers. What we know so far, he might not be Groyper, isn't Groyper, but nonetheless used a lot of that gaming language. And everyone's trying to figure out what the hell is happening to young people online. Lot to talk about. And yesterday, because I know Sai wants to talk about this also, the DOJ just decided to scrub, totally not shady. The DOJ decided to scrub their study from 2024 that said in the past 10 years, the goat of the goat of extremism and domestic terror threat in America is right wing extremism for the past 10 years. And Sai, they just decided, totally normal, to scrub that from the internet. I've given you a lot.
Just
Wherever you
quietly.
start, I'll go. Sai, wherever you want to go with this, and then we'll break it down for everyone. Sai.
So I do want to sort of rewind a little bit because I think people are getting very, I won't say bogged down in the details because there are so many details to this case. And, it is such an inflammatory situation coming at a time in, our general culture that is kind of waiting for a match, frankly. And so, but if you kind of rewind back to the beginning of internet subculture, these kinds of communities have existed for a very long time. And so I personally, I hope I'm older than I look, or, look younger than I am, but I'm actually in my 40s and I was
You look
a,
like you're in your 30s. I thought you were like a
thank you.
cool 30-year-old like hipster, and I was like, so well done, Sai. You have aged well. I have aged horribly. Continue.
Not at all. But I was a Usenet kid. And
Mm.
so if for those of you who were not around for that, that was the precursor to Reddit. Reddit actually inherited their tech when Reddit got started up. And so that was a similar concept where it was a bulletin board system, or BBS. That was what we called it back then. And there were these similar ideas of boards that had communities that were based around a shared interest. And so you saw a lot of the same activity starting to happen back then. Now, this was all text based at the time, so there was not a lot of imagery being surfaced, but there were still kind of these like proto memes, right? And when we talk about memes, what we're talking about there is actually a concept that was brought up by or coined by Richard Dawkins, who you may know for his sometimes partisan ideological bent. But he actually came up with this term in the selfish gene, which was his work from, I think, in the 60s. Am I right about that? But memes are supposed to be analogous to genes. And so just like genes can transmute human information from generation to generation, memes are the mental constructs or behavioral constructs that are capable of existing and are capable of mutating and communicating from generation to generation or person to person, right? And so that's where you get also the word mimetic. You're going to hear a lot of the word mimetic being thrown around. And so it is both mimicry and it is also the ability to spread between a large numbers of people and, have legs. So these ideas, these phrases, these behaviors can actually permeate and scale. And so, again, going back to Usenet and the beginning of this, prior to the internet, these communities are mostly around things like, actual magazines or periodicals that you could send away for and then write to the publication. And so you saw some of that with, Ted Kaczynski, or some of the earlier prototypes for extremism in the United States. But then when you get into the internet and you get into these subcultures that are leveraging technology, and the far right movements, neo-Nazism in particular, really knew to leverage this as a way to get around certain things and federal regulations around types of mail being sent and things like that. So they started to use these types of technologies to get their ideology out and to recruit more people. And because, then you move into these, beyond the bulletin board systems, the image boards like 4chan, 8chan, and then social media, which are actually based around automatically pulling in people who are engaging with a specific type of content or idea. And you start to see the permeation of these types of ideas, these types of images, these types of words into the general culture. And who is
Scott,
going to
can I
get
mention a
exposed to
book?
that?
Can I
Yeah.
just press pause as you continue for a book for people who really want to know how white nationalists and the white power moves in particular really glommed on to these, if you will, now podunk, but like primitive online spaces to recruit and spread hate and actually organize. Read Kathleen Belew's Bring the War Home. And she talks about how since the beginning, there has been, this technology has been co-opted in part and used by some of the best people, but also some of the worst people. Just wanted to throw that in there, please. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but just wanted to throw that nugget in there. Sai, please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great resource. And so, who is going to naturally be more open to being exposed to these newer forms of technology, but young people, right? And so that's, I don't think that's as much of an intrinsic factor or motivation now, because these movements do tend to skew toward the younger folks, younger generation. But it is a good to get a good idea of how people are falling into these holes. There are these platforms that have sort of a wide surface. So that's something like a public portal where you can enter, like 4chan, 8chan, Reddit, and then the Telegram servers, or Discord servers, the Telegram channels, things like that are kind of like the van to the second location. The wide public surfaces are being used to get people into these more private areas where they can kind of let it rip, right?
For those who don't know, and we're going to explain it to folks like they're 8 years old. So if you're really advanced, just be a bit patient. And even if you're advanced,
Sorry.
you're not as advanced as Sai. She's going to break stuff down. Your brain will melt and you'll like probably pray to God, even if you're not religious. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is where it's gone. So this is the origin, right? So you had these online spaces, the online forums, right? Talk to us about the creation of 4chan, because, you and I know 4chan, but it's been in the news for the past week. And I know a lot of the normies are like, 4chan? What's that?
So 4chan, and you'll pardon me because I'm actually not like a deep historian of all of the different
No,
steps
no,
of
no,
these
no. Just
boards,
just
but
just
I will
connecting the
point
dots.
people, yeah, I will point people to a great documentary on this. It's called The Unsocial Network. It is on Netflix. That is specifically about the rise of 4chan, which then, evolved into 8chan, and how that influenced the QAnon movement and the raid on and the attack on the US Capitol. So that's a great place to go if you really want to deep dive. But essentially, what happened is once we got into the early aughts to mid aughts, there were this 4chan was a evolution of a Japanese, I want to say it was, concept of these image boards, and that one was called 2chan, and it was only in Japanese. And so there was a very young person at the time who started this startup, 4chan, which was one of these image boards. And what these image boards are is they essentially are kind of a competition where everything's anonymous. Anyone who wants to come there and post is anonymous. This is very similar again to the ethos of the early internet, where you can anyone can be anything on the internet, right? And so you can come to these boards and post whatever you want. And if people engage with it and upvote it, then it rises to the top. And if no one engages with it or upvotes it, then it dies. And so you start to see, again, this like competitive environment with who can create the most viral content, or as we see now, the most enraging or shocking content, and that will naturally rise to the top of each of the boards. And the boards are all with, again, organized around that idea of special interests. So they're all different kinds of boards, and not all of them contain hate speech, right? That's an important thing to say, but it's just when the actual like environment is keyed toward competition and toward certain ideas of winning, then it creates a perverse incentive to create the kinds of content that are going to naturally get people riled up and engaged.
And this leads to another question: the gaming culture, the intersection of gaming within these movements. Now, folks, my kids play games. I play video games. Not every gamer is violent. There's games in Japan. Those people don't have to end up being freaking mass shooters like we have in America. I just want to put that out there. But gaming culture and how it intersected with these online spaces and communities, and how it got perverted and radicalized.
And this is where it starts to intersect with an incident called Gamergate. And so in Gamergate, we had a gamer and game designer, Zoe Quinn, who designed a game called Depression Quest. And this gets into the politics around women in gaming and women in gaming spaces. And of course, just like with certain other technical spaces, you don't see a prevalence of women who are, high prevalence of women in these spaces. And so Zoe Quinn designed a game. That game got positive reviews by a journalist. Her ex-boyfriend then made a blog post that accused her of trading sexual favors for positive coverage. And this just blew the lid off of this entire space. And I think it was a lot of this was simmering issues within these spaces again that are kind of about incursion, right? And so because so much of this is about identity and community and giving people a sense of belonging, and a lot of these folks that are attracted to these spaces in the first place feel extremely rejected by dominant narratives and dominant power structures, that when they see their space being co-opted or incurred, people invading their space, then they have a tendency to retaliate and also to ratchet up the extreme response. And so that's kind of what we saw there, where it created this, culture of anti-feminism, resistance to social justice. It was a decentralized but organized campaign that included doxing and online harassment, death threats, and misinformation. And so that kind of created a prototype for a lot of what we're seeing now, that has just become kind of standard issue harassment that you see from these groups that will, once they decide on a target. I mean, we're seeing this with the recent website that lists all of the people who supposedly celebrated after Charlie Kirk's murder, that they are being doxxed, they are being harassed, they are being threatened. And so this created the prototype of that, and it was seen as successful.
I think this is so important because look, what's common to you and me isn't common to other people. And I think you using the word prototype is excellent because this happened about 11 years ago, 11, 10 years ago.
2014 to 2015, yeah.
Yeah. And in the last 10 years, folks, the GOAT when it comes to domestic terrorism is right wing extremism. That's the GOAT. Left wing is also there, Muslim extremism there, but nothing comes closer. And Cato Institute, that flaming lefty institute, Cato, also came out with this. The Economist came out with this. New American Foundation came out with this. Folks, it's the last 10 years. Well, there's some people who emerged 10 years ago on the political landscape. I wonder who that could be. And you've seen what was considered fringe get more and more normalized. And specifically what Gamergate did, and I just want to connect the dots to now, we're just going to take that ship nicely and slowly, this DeLorean, right, all the way through, is you saw these spaces. And I think it's important, with games, with comic books. These are some of my spaces too. I'm going to go to the comic book store today. I enjoy comic books. It's the Wednesday. Every Wednesday, you get my pull box. When it comes to games, oftentimes these used to be refuge spaces for the women, LGBTQ, people who are nerds, blurs, dorks, right? And then what you're saying, identity, community, shared language, shared culture. But then there is an aspect of these communities, often not always white men, not always though, folks, but predominantly who said these people are infiltrating, like you said, incursion. They are replacing us. And you see what's mapping out in an international level with the replacement theory, the white nationalist theory, by the way, espoused by Donald Trump, Republicans, and also Charlie Kirk, Tommy Robinson, and others. You saw that happening in Gamergate. Yeah, you basically saw anti-CRT, anti-DEI, anti-woman, anti-LGBT, and anti-Black people happening in Gamergate, that these women and these LGBT and these Black folks are taking over our space. Can you talk to us about how you might not know, but like Steve Bannon and the right wing saw this as an opportunity, an entryway?
Yes. And so they saw the, vicious kind of like proliferation of this and they said, "Oh, that's a powder keg. Like people are really upset about this. Like these people who we haven't really traditionally tapped into this because we didn't really know that these people might be susceptible to our ideas. And so how can we actually enter this space and sort of bring more people into our tent because we think that they would be a really good resource for us." And so I think this gets into then what we see in the lead up to the 2016 election, which, and keep in mind too, like after Gamergate, we're sort of like sliding into like the incel era, where like the incel culture really starts to coalesce and cohere. And a lot of that is happening on these image boards, and a lot of it is around 4chan, and a lot of it is around memes. And so when you think of a meme, again, that's this, idea or word or words or image that is easily transmittable and that you can think of it like a palimpsest, right? So what you see on the surface might be just like, oh, a cartoon frog, but there are layers and layers and layers of meaning behind that, and they are both a signaling of identity into a certain group, and they're also about status. Because again, the ones that rise to the top, the ones that become the most popular, are a form of clout, right? And so if you know what this meme means and that meme means, and you can immediately recognize all of the different layers of meaning, it's essentially saying like, I am more into this subculture than you don't get it. And a lot of this environment is predicated on exclusion. And that's another really important thing to remember with these groups, because a lot of them feel like they don't have any other space to exist in. And so when they're trying to create these fortified little compounds for themselves, even if those compounds are based on rejection and nihilism. So when you get the lead up to the 2016 election, they look at Donald Trump, like it's the way that 4chan like codes their boards. It'll be like forward slash a phrase or a couple letters and then forward slash. So slash poll, POL for politics. And that is the one that really takes off with these memes around Donald Trump and around deciding that, oh, he's our candidate because no one likes him. So he's like us. And he is almost a meme because of how ridiculous he is and how bombastic and over the top and hateful. And he represents this, vortex, this tornado that's going to go into these environments that have rejected us, and he's just going to destroy it. And wouldn't that be funny? And so they got
Bulldoze.
behind him.
He doesn't give a
Bulldozer.
shit. He mocks everyone.
Exactly.
He's anti-establishment. He's a cartoon character. He talks about grabbing women by the pee. He doesn't care about political correctness. Awesome. And this is all hilarious. LOLs. We'll talk about the humor aspect of it, but some people are asking, before we talk about incel, Can you talk, for those who don't know, how this coincides with the red pill movement and why that's so fundamental to what we see as the modern conservative movement, the red pilling? What does that mean? Because a lot of people don't
So
get that.
there is something called the alt-right pipeline, which is like if you are exposed to a specific form of media, that might be in a wellness space, that might be in a fitness space, that might be in a parenting space. And on the surface, this seems very innocuous. And you're sort of like, oh, I can engage with that idea. Like, there are healthy foods that I should be eating, or maybe I should be changing my gym routine because I don't have high self-esteem, or maybe I'm doing the wrong things when I'm dating. And so then slowly, as you engage further and further and further with that content, or adjacent, people who are adjacent to that initial creator that you might have come in on, you go further and further and further down this radicalization pipeline where you end up in these extreme spaces. So this is even why we see like wellness folks from, traditionally maybe more left-wing folks going into the Maha pipeline, because they started out with these, holistic smoothies, and then they ended up somewhere with like, oh, I'm an anti-vaxxer now. And so this is happening with young men who are, again, feeling rejected, having low self-esteem, maybe feeling a sense of self-alienation, because you do have to take into consideration that a lot of these people have incidents in their lives that might have created some trauma, right? And it could be a divorce. It could be having a family that wants you to conform to really rigid ideas about success. And then you don't feel like you can do that. And you feel like a terrible failure. You can't find a girlfriend because you feel like you're unattractive. So they're engaging with this in order to try to maybe initially fix this problem. But that during that radicalization process becomes, actually, it's not my problem. It's everyone who's against me.
It's the
And
women,
it's the
it's the
women,
libs, the
it's the
gays,
lib. Yeah.
Hollywood, Jews, Muslims, immigrants. It's
Yep.
them.
Exactly. And so and again, that creates a sense of solidarity, and that creates a sense of belonging and community, and it creates a sense of certainty, and certainty is very addictive, and it's very tough to get out of that place once you're in it. And so that's the sort of red pill idea of like going from taking the red pill, and this goes back to the Matrix, right? Where Morpheus, the Lawrence Fishburne character, is holding out the two pills to Neo and says, once you take this, you can't go back. You'll see the world for what it really is. And so the red pill is waking up to the actual reality of women are the problem. These elites are the problem. The deep state is the problem, things like that. So if you want me to talk about black pill, I can talk about
No,
that
no,
too.
we'll get to black pill. So don't worry, folks. Folks, you thought it was just the red pill. We've moved beyond red pill. We're going to talk about black pill in a moment. But I just want to, I hope this is useful for people. It's very useful to me. Thank you so much, Sai. I know it's probably boring to you, but to a lot of people watching, they're like, wow, she's awesome. Okay, so let's just stick with 2016. I think it's important because it all connects, folks. 2016, you're seeing this rise, the red pill movement. They openly talk about, I'm red pilled. I see the truth. Many, not exclusively, are young men, especially young white men, not exclusively, who eventually get into these spaces through wellness, through sports, through working out. Recently in this election, through bro humor, the Joe Rogan humor. Joe Rogan is a fantastic example of wellness, muscles, comedy, shit talking, anti PC, and UFC. All right. So
Mhm.
all of this is coming together, right? If you got all notice, it's online, but then, folks, someone just asked, is it online? It's online, but then it also is now manifesting outwardly. Okay.
Mhm.
One of the people that people, I mentioned Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon worked in Hollywood, folks, and Steve Bannon also worked in the gaming community. And in these gaming communities, Steve Bannon realized, oh, there's an online community of young men that we can actually tap into and attract to our cause. And then you saw Gamergate, and they're like, oh, you can run essentially the anti DEI pro white message and win over all these men who are looking for identity, who are looking for belonging, who want girls, who are trying to get better. And we've given them an enemy, right? So, what the right wing did, and I give them credit for this in the worst way possible, side.
Yeah.
Everyone said, Obama and the Democrats understood tech and media. Yeah, in 2008. The right wing
Yeah.
has understood this new media of the past 10 years and actively co-opted them. I mean, I just want to, for people who don't know, I'm trying to bring all the receipts for folks. Um, I kept telling people, here's an example of this manifesting in real life. 2024 election night. Donald Trump invites Dana White, the head of UFC, to come to the dais and the microphone. Can't believe I'm saying this. This is beyond idiocracy. That's why I think idiocracy can't be used anymore, because that movie, which is great, was not this stupid. Dana White, the head of UFC, comes and then from the stage thanks podcasters, comedians, Joe Rogan, the Nelk Boys, these pranksters who then got co-opted by the right, and also this other guy whose name I'm forgetting that Mark Maron just made fun of. Total brain fart, even though I know exactly who is. The guy who's kind of like Southern accent, talks like this, got the
Yvonne.
comedian Theo Von, and he thanks them, says, "Hey, because of you, Donald Trump became president." So we'll get to from 2016 to 2024, but those who think this is all out there, nope, it's straight connected. So now we're at 2016. You're seeing the co-option, very deliberate co-option of these online spaces by the right wing who are investing their time and their money. And now you see the rise of something called the incel movement. Can you explain what and who is an incel?
So incel it's sort of a concatenation of the words involuntarily celibate. And it was actually a term that was coined by a woman. And that's a super interesting thing. But it very
Oh, I
quickly
didn't know
took
that.
off. Yeah, it very quickly took off and migrated to this culture that saw themselves as, again, like, this is not my fault, right? I'm involuntarily celibate. Like, if I could, I would have a relationship. I would be with a woman, but they are preventing me from doing that because of their own issues with, again, being greedy, wanting money over everything else, wanting status over everything else. And this is, where the archetypes within the incel world of Chad Chad and Stacy come out, which are kind of this, again, catch-all term for the Chad is a super attractive, muscular, rich guy, and the Stacy is a prototypical, pretty white blonde girl who only wants, who is a gold digger and only wants status. And so, when you hear those terms, that's what that's referring to, are these kind of like cultural archetypes within that movement. So it because the red pill pipeline, the right wing pipeline there is leading into this incel culture, which is rabidly anti-feminist, rabidly misogynistic, and again focused on externalizing and projecting out all of this internal insecurity and self-hatred.
And you see that supercharged with Andrew Tate. Can you talk to, just real quick, can you talk to people about Andrew Tate? Because I'm shocked to know that parents have no idea that their kids are listening to Andrew Tate. Because Andrew Tate now is the physical manifestation of a meme come to life, in my opinion.
You can think of Andrew Tate as the worst form of this Chad archetype that has also absorbed all of that rabidly anti-feminist and misogynistic attitude. He is a podcaster and has like, I don't know if I got harem essentially of these women who they will live stream and give their earnings to him. So it is a almost like a sex exploitation situation. He was recently charged in Romania, I
Yeah,
want to say. Is that
him
right?
and his brother.
With rape and sexual assault, and the Trump administration allowed him to be extradited back to the United States instead of facing charges in Romania. So this is someone who is very loud and proud about their hatred of women and sort of the objectification and dehumanization of women, and that women are only tools to be used to gain male power and status.
And it was Richard Grenell of the Trump administration that allowed Andrew Tate and Tristan to, they were under house arrest in Romania. They couldn't leave. And then they were allowed, a special visit to US where, by the way, they went to a UFC match and all these people liked them. I'm telling you folks, what's
Yeah,
common to us isn't common to other people. The right wing are on top of this. They're 10 years ahead of the rest of us. This pipeline has radicalized so many people, not exclusively, mostly white men, but there's others. We'll talk about that, how
there's a lot
everything
of
is mixed.
others.
Yeah, there's mix and match. So now they've red pilled folks. You have this incel movement. You see Steve Bannon and Donald Trump in particular, these folks saying, aha, there's pipelines through gaming, pop culture, Star Wars now, wellness. Each time there's a woman in Star Wars, we're going to use pop culture. Every time there's a black little mermaid, okay, video games, awesome. We're getting this army of young men, but not just young straight men. We're going to talk about how it's a mishmash, right? Then we're getting these incels. Okay, it's building. It's building. Talk to us, if you will, about the next step when it comes to, and well, we'll talk to us about the creation of Groypers and specifically Pepe the Frog, because a lot of people around this time, they're like, what the F is Pepe? And how did that then become used by the Groypers, who, if I remember correctly, emerged in 2019?
So Pepe the Frog is a character that was invented by an illustrator named Matt Fury. He was originally part of a comic book that Matt Fury published called Boys Club, and it was just this cute frog. It was a character that Matt Fury had been drawing his entire life, and it was completely innocuous, frankly. And what happened was he scanned a page of his comic and put it on a Tumblr. And so this is back in, I want to say, like 2013, 2014. And that page of the comic got one of the cells turned into a little image that people also started posting on their Tumblrs, and then started showing up on these image boards. And the frog, Pepe's head, it had a speech bubble and it just said "feels good, man." And so that started being the meme that people would attach to something that
Like this?
they were proud of. That one was different. That one came
Yeah,
later. It was just his head, and it was like,
I like that one. Yeah.
you know,
That was really good.
and
Well done, Sai.
thanks. And so that was just something that people would attach to something good that happened to them or something they were proud of. It was actually a positive thing. And so Matt Fury did not really take any action as a result of this. He was like, people are taking this, they're doing what they want with it. It's okay. And then over time, that meme became super popular. And there were a lot of people, especially younger women, who started appropriating that image and doing their own glosses on it with Pepe as a woman with makeup or like with whatever. It was just like, hey, this is a chill meme. Like, we're going to interpret this in our, group. And they were coming onto these 4chan boards and looking for new cool Pepe memes to appropriate and take over to Instagram or whatever. And so it was similar to Gamergate, that the folks that were in this space said, absolutely not. This is ours. This is a symbol of our space and our identity, and you will absolutely not take this and make it into something for you. And so that's when they started putting Pepe in these more and more and more offensive scenarios.
Mm,
And before you know it, it starts becoming like a symbol that's appropriated by these more extreme groups as the groups themselves become more extreme. And so then you get Pepe as a neo-Nazi, you get Pepe doing all kinds of just terrible things, and you get all the different flavors of Pepe that are doing terrible things. And so, and at that point, Matt Fury says enough is enough. And he does try to fight back. There was one failed campaign that he tried to launch that would, is the hashtag Save Pepe. Obviously, the incel community completely revolted against that and turned it against him. And then he started filing lawsuits. And the first one that he filed was actually against Alex Jones. And that was successful. And then that followed with multiple other groups. So there, like a lot of these like openly neo-Nazi or far-right groups can now no longer sell things that have Pepe on them, but you will still see this in a lot of the like the Groyper movement has their own Pepe, and that's the one that's sort of like this, right? Um, and they have a number of other ones that have are associated with the concept of Keck, or this gets into just like crazy stuff, but
Francis. So Francis is like, I'm lost. Francis, it's okay. Take a breath. Take a breath. We're gonna connect it. It's a lot. It's a lot, but I think Sai is doing an amazing job. If you haven't been in this space, just we're gonna fill in the dots more. And for Neha, who said, Neha's like, I'm taking a collective breath as we listen to this. Oh, save up your breaths, because this is the mild stuff, folks. We're in 2019, 2020 territory. We're about to get to 2025. But this is going to connect to everything. So now you see, so Pepe, for those, just to do cliff notes, Pepe, benign illustration created by a guy with the best of intentions. He puts it out on the internet. People take it. At first, it's good. women use it, other people use it. I feel good. But then some of these folks, huh, much like what's happening in modern politics in Europe and US, said, "You are co-opting what belongs to us. How dare you? This is ours. You are replacing and taking what belongs to us."
Right.
Sound familiar, folks? It is our meme. And so then they pervert this otherwise benign avatar of Pepe the Frog and then use it in increasingly anti-woman, anti-LGBT, anti-immigrant neo-Nazi spaces, which then takes us to Groypers. Can you just explain Groypers? Because that was in the news for the past week.
Groypers are a group. It's again a loose group, so it's not something that is super membership focused the way that something like the KKK would be, right? But it is a group that is associated with Nick Fuentes, whose name has come up a lot recently. And he is the sort of public face of this movement. He's also associated with the America First brand. So that is, you'll see the flags that have AF on them or symbols that have AF. That is his brand, and he is the public face of their movement. It is essentially a trolling movement. It is very online. It is you probably, you might have a grouper in your neighborhood, but you probably don't see them because they probably don't leave the house very much. So this is not something where people are lining up in the streets and, holding a lot of insignia or marching down the street. It is primarily centered online, and it is primarily centered on campaigns of harassment that include taking quote unquote edgy stances on things and trying to offend or provoke other people who have more institutional ideas, right? So that's the idea of an edge lord or edge lord comedy, is like, I am using this offensive, edgy stance in order to provoke you so that I can feel emotionally superior because you have lost your cool.
Yeah, and
And
I
so
think the
Groypers
edge.
are very much in that.
And can you talk to us how Groypers comes, like how the meme led to Groypers, how poor Pepe led to them being called the Groyper army, if you will.
So the Groyper army is, and there were, gosh, I mean, this just gets into such a rabbit hole. The Gro- there
Yeah,
were two things
Miriam
also.
Beth, is this related to Nick Fuentes? Yes. So Nick
Yes,
Fuentes
he
is
is the
the
public face. Yeah.
unofficial leader of this collective Groyper movement. And Nick Fuentes is a man who made his bones by using these Groypers, this online collection of not exclusively type of, white young men who are part of this inside culture, who are using this inside comedy, who are more right wing in certain ways than Charlie Kirk. And so what Nick Fuentes did and how he came into prominence is that he trolled not the left. He trolled Charlie Kirk. And he said Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, which is so super right, is not right enough. So then they used to go to his his on-campus events and push him to going in darker and deeper and more pro-white and more neo-Nazi, right? And for everything, Nick Fuentes is a joke. He said Hitler was based. And Nick Fuentes said stuff like having sex with women is gay. And so then they also are pushing and trolling Ben Shapiro because they see Ben Shapiro as a Jew being a globalist. So they see Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro being establishment globalists who are not America first and white enough. But just because you are affiliated with some of their memes and language, much like Tyler Robinson, because Tyler Robinson for Halloween in 2018, Sai, can you tell him what was his Halloween costume that his mother did not understand?
So this is kind of one of those contested things because there was like that side by side comparison of Tyler's costume that his mother said, "Oh well, Tyler, ha ha ha, he's some guy in a meme," and then the Pepe the Frog that is. That version of Pepe again is like it's kind of been misinterpreted as a groper meme. The original version was like something that came out of a quote unquote Slavic squat meme, and I'm forgetting the exact terminology for which Pepe it is now, but it's
It's
not
a Pepe
specifically
with a black hoodie squatting.
squatting in a tracksuit. And so
Yeah,
that evolved out of a meme of a bunch of guys in Eastern Europe wearing that outfit squatting on the ground. And that became picked up in Groyper circles, but it's not Gopnik Pepe, that's the name of it. And so again, all of these are like kind of like offensive, like a little bit like again, that when we say edgy, we what we mean is offensive, right?
yeah,
And so that one is something that people have since said, well, that maybe that Tyler was just Gopnik Pepe, or it was coming from the Slavic squat meme itself, and it wasn't necessarily a Groyper reference. But this is where it gets into the ambiguity of these things, and they're
there you go.
intentionally ambiguous, because that's part of the irony. Because you can say, like, if somebody sees that and says, oh, that's a terribly upsetting and offensive thing that you just said, you say, oh, it's a joke. You just don't get it, you know? And so, again, this is a lot about plausible deniability. But that is one of the Pepes that was used to say, oh, he's a member of this particular group. But
And
as far as
and
the uh
sorry, continue.
but as far as the actual Groyper version of Pepe, that one appeared for the first time in 2015, and it is again the one where so you can see his whole body, and he's rather rotund, and he's got his hands like this. And this expression, if you see a Pepe like this, it is the expression. There's also one like this. It's like sly Pepe. And that one is essentially saying, look at you losing your cool. Like, I've won this argument. So that is kind of one of the symbols of the Groyper movement because of the tactics that they use.
And if you've ever been on Twitter like I have, and I hope you have, and engaged with right-wing trolls, both those who are bots and those who are real people, their end game is all we owned you. It's all video gamer language. It's like aha, owned, pawned. It's that's all it is. Doesn't matter. Like, oh, take the L, take the L. Why don't you take the L? Are you crying? Are you crying? That's all it is. That's the owning the libs. That's all they care about. It's like it's almost gamer language, right? When you used to play Halo or all these other games, when you used to teabag someone, what you used to do is after you used to kill your opponent, you used to stand over them and crouch so that that through your avatar, your balls are touching their face, saying, ha ha ha, I own you. So this type of language now, folks, has now morphed into right-wing language and right-wing trolls. And now, folks, we have straight up podcasters and shit talkers as the head of the FBI. Not making this up. So I'm just trying to connect the dots for folks. I know it's a lot, right? So can you explain the ambiguity now? Because in the past week, Sai, as we were learning more about Tyler Robinson, and we still are, by the way,
Yes.
um, you know, it was so Donald Trump, and I want to keep the receipts before any proof, any suspect, any motive, said it was the left and transgender ideology. There's no such thing as transgender ideology. And then Stephen Miller ran on it, and Fox News ran on it, and to this day they're still running on it, ignoring the facts, right, without any suspect and any motive. Then we found out, oh, there's bullet casings. And then we found out these memes on the bullet casings. And then we saw the photo of Tyler Robinson. So I said, I was ready to be convinced that this guy could be associated with and or influenced by a Groyper movement and straight up be just a nihilist. We're still learning more. Can you talk to us before we get to it? Can you talk to us about the video gaming language used on the bullet engravings from what we know?
So there's one in particular, which is the "Hey Fascist" catch with the arrows. That one comes from the game Helldivers 2, and so that code, up down something. I don't
Something,
actually
something.
play that game.
Dropping of the bomb.
Yeah, a bomb that it will potentially kill some of your teammates as well, but it is seen as a almost like an owning moment, right? So this is the largest weapon that you can use. Um, then there was excuse me, if you're reading this, you're gay, LMAO, and then the one that comes from the furries meme. So that is the notices bulges. Hey, what's this? Ooh. Um, those are all, again, though, coming like as much from gamer culture as they are coming from these fringe online spaces. And part of the ambiguity in using these things is that they are an appeal to exclusive identities. So each one of those could conceivably be an appeal to a specific community that would recognize this as a win or a shit post or a meme that essentially it catapulted these communities into being recognized by these dominant power structures. And so I think that's a huge part of why these memes get used in a lot of the violent actions that we see them used in, is because, and this is part of the ambiguity too, where they don't like either side of the dialectic here, right? And this is why we can't really think of things in terms of traditional right and left polarity. Because if you feel excluded from both sides, if you say, well, the conservatives are just as disingenuous as the liberals will get power and they'll say they're going to do things to help us and then they won't do them. And the conservatives are just as grifty and taking money from Israel and all of these other things. We are standing by ourselves. We are above all of that. Our community is superior and we can hold this extreme view, but also be this fringe community and do these things together. And if you look at us and say, oh, it's because they fall into this camp or the other camp, that's because you're stupid. And so this is
Yeah,
why
and
it gets,
someone, and I just want to answer. Someone asked this question: Helldivers 2, is it just plays by the Groypers? No, I think the messiness. This is where we're going to get to Black Pill, and if you're still with us, your brain's about to leak out of your head, and you're gonna just be like, oh my, you're gonna start literally praying for our kids. Um, we see now the mishmash, folks. We see it's gone messy. And the analogy I gave, I just talked to Kevin Cruz, historian. I'm gonna post this up later. Sai is what the right wing tried to do, and I think we're seeing the fissures literally in real time. They said, okay, we can radicalize a mob. We can create our own monster. And like the movie Weapons that came out recently, we can control these weapons of young kids and use them as our own weapon against our enemies. Well, what happens if that weapon, that radicalized monster, escapes the lab? And what happens if that monster starts becoming autonomous, much like the monsters in Alien Earth? Great show right now. And what happens if the monster starts turning on Frankenstein, its creator? And you're seeing it now. You're seeing now a mishmash of stuff. You're seeing them rebel. You're seeing them go against each other for not being radical enough. You're seeing Groypers turn on Charlie Kirk. You're seeing Candace Owens turn on Kash Patel. You're seeing Cat Turd and Matt Walsh and all these people not believe the FBI stuff, right? You're seeing after they were radicalized online, specifically in 4chan through QAnon, white supremacist conspiracy theory, you've seen them radicalize the base now. And now they don't believe Kash Patel and the administration on the Epstein files. And what you're seeing now with Tyler Robinson, the alleged suspect, what we know, based on what we know, is he wasn't necessarily right or left according to his friends. Grew up in conservative Utah, MAGA family, loved guns. So his friend said, I guess he was pro Second Amendment, so you could say he was right, but he didn't vote for Trump. And then in the last year, he became really pro LGBTQ rights because apparently he's gay. So I guess he's left. But his mom, the only evidence she's given that he might become more left is that he became more pro gay. But being pro-gay doesn't mean you're left or progressive. A lot of closeted LGBTQ members within these toxic white supremacist spaces as well. And then what we know so far, based on what we know, is he was pissed off at Charlie Kirk for espousing hate against gays. He's gay. He's apparently in love with his roommate. So that's what it was, a personal grievance that motivated him to violence. And what's so interesting, Sai, is again, based on what we know, even in his personally politically motivated grievance killing allegedly of Charlie Kirk, he's still shitposted on the bullets.
yeah.
Can you unpack that? I hope people are still with me.
And one thing I do want to add is that we don't definitively know, right, that he's in a relationship with his roommate. And
I'm
we,
saying
yeah,
alleged.
yeah. I just want to make sure. And but the official narrative is that, and if that is the official narrative, one thing that you have to recognize is that there are people in these spaces that don't even have to be closeted, right? And it's very paradoxical and confusing as to why, let's say, someone would hold these views that are contrary to their community while also engaging in that community openly. And this is where some people might kind of just, ow, but there is something called the incel to looks maxing to transmaxing pipeline.
Mm,
And that is where you have somebody who comes in to the incel community, they want to become as attractive to women as possible. And so they will engage in sometimes very extreme things like plastic surgery or in body modification. And there are even, you know, actual measurements so that people will say are the ideal measurements and features to have that they will, measure their philtrum and they will measure their, eyelid. It's very
There's
aggressive.
actual photos, folks. Go Google it right now. There are photos of the ideal type of man that Sai's talking about with the jaws and they promoted
The
that. This is the
hunter
ideal man.
eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of get disappointed by that part of the pipeline, then you can actually go down the further slope, which is transmaxing. And that is a idea that in classical Rome and Greece, the power, the elite powerful people would engage in having these young male lovers that were very beautiful, and that was in part to because women were not even capable of women were so bad that they were incapable of actually serving and promoting the powerful men in their society. And so it is based on this Greco-Roman concept, but it actually can be that some of the folks who get disappointed by the looks maxing part of things start to either become a feminized man that will support a alpha chad, or they will transition to be women because they can be the kind of women who are not actually women and therefore don't fall into the traps that an actual woman fall into.
And which is why you will hear people like Fuentes and others in these spaces say having sex with women is so gay.
Exactly.
Are you gay that you want to have sex with women, you homo? They say stuff like this, and you're like, what? And then also the messiness. Are you all still with us? Do I have you for 10 more minutes, Ty?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And don't worry, folks, for those, the 1,400 people, fantastic, who are listening to us, don't worry. Go back and listen to this. It'll be up on my Substack and Sci Substack. And for those who don't have the process of it, I'll also link to Sci's 8-minute TikTok rundown on 2x speed, where well, your brain will explode. But we're doing this like the Delorean remedial high school way for everyone, and even for me, it's a lot, right? I want to give one example because this is out of the news, and I don't think it should be. And I think it's a great example. 2.5 weeks ago, there was a Minneapolis Catholic school shooting, mass shootings all the time. And the suspect was identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. The suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. What we found out from the suspects, you won't even call it a manifesto. A lot of people say it's like ramblings. Mentally disturbed, had violent ideation for a long time, was a male born under a different name, changed name to Robin Westman, and Charlie Kirk and so many others use this to attack transgender people and promote, anti-transgender conspiracies for the past 2 weeks. But what we found out was Robin Westman, a white man who then did not necessarily transition, but identified as a woman, uh, also was in online spaces, also was promoting white supremacist conspiracy theories, and also was very Islamophobic. And what we found out through the extremely violent thoughts and ideas and the handwritten notes was a mishmash of different ideologies, inspired by Brenton Tarrant and all these Islamophobic mass shooters, had that engraved on her gun. And there was an interesting quote from her manifesto ramblings. The message is that there is no message.
Mhm.
Sai, let's use that now to talk about the Black Pill movement.
Right. And so Black Pill gets into another sort of like you can think of this almost like a rabbit warren, right? Where you might come in one place and then the path deviates and then it deviates again and it deviates again. And so, not everybody who is one thing is also another thing. And the Black Pill movement is a little bit like you come in at the red pill, you come in as an incel, and then you decide that like actually none of this is going to do it for me, and I nothing is going to make my life better. I have no future that I can see, and it usually starts with I have no future in relationships that I can see, but it's often ends up in there is no future in life that I can see for myself, and every option has been foreclosed, and I am just going to basically give up, and it becomes nihilism. And so you can think of black pill as a person who has gone through the process of what they think trying to improve their life and has decided that nothing matters, and so we might as well just give up and or watch it all burn, right, and enjoy the show. And so that is black pill in a sort of little encapsulation. And so you're starting to see a lot of that nihilism percolate in the fringes of these subcultures as well. This is not to say that everybody involved in them is nihilistic, but there is a hefty, hefty dose of despair and nihilism that is a part of these groups.
And someone said this. Can you talk about the accelerationist aspect of the black pill movement?
Accelerationism exists on both the left and the right. It actually was originally a left wing concept, and it was then sort of co opted by the IDF, interestingly, and then percolated into extreme right wing groups. And in extreme right wing groups, it means engaging in acts, usually of violence, that will hasten societal unrest and collapse. So they're provocative acts that will serve as sort of a fulcrum to start breaking open the seams of the power structures that they want to destroy and will hasten the end of the society that they want to overthrow.
It reminds me almost of the Joker and like the
Yep.
Watchmen, the comedian, right? Where the comedian is a man who's radicalized by violence as a soldier of war and comes to the realization that nothing matters and it's all a joke. So as he's being beaten up and killed, he says it's all just a joke and he laughs. And then the Joker believes that like nothing really matters. So he wants to hasten the decline. And his goal in life is to break the alleged rules and order of Batman. He sees himself as like the antithesis of Batman, and his goal, like he completes him, right? Like Batman is his yin to this yang, and he wants to prove that no, nothing matters, and we can make a joke out of mass murder. Why not, right? And what's so interesting about now this black pill movement, and especially I think why it's so dangerous, is young people now, they're against the establishment. So they're not Republican. They're no longer even Donald Trump and MAGA anymore because he's seen as a sellout. All the institutions are instruments of oppression. Everything that they taught were lies. God doesn't exist. There's no such thing as prophets. The end game is here. Climate change is real. No woman will get them. They have no jobs. Nothing matters. So if nothing matters, then the only purpose then is to hasten the end and be the person like Major Kong and Doctor Strangelove and ride the bomb with your hat held above your high saying yeehaw.
Yeehaw. Hmm.
I just came up with
And
that myself. I feel kind of proud of that.
no, it's great. I love it.
Uh, how do we, because to me, Sai, this is inevitable. I know this might sound strange. If people have no hope, if people have no faith, if people see that there's no future, if people do not have access to resources, if men in particular, not exclusively, as we've seen, feel like they can never get a woman, they can never get a job, they can never leave their mother's basement, they can have no purpose, no elevation, no status in life, then this becomes a very attractive type of nihilistic doom cult for them. For many people, folks, if you step back and, I've been researching this for a while, when you look at the DNA of violent extremists, I don't care if they were part of the IRA, I don't care if they're part of gangs, I don't care if they're Al-Qaeda, white supremacists, the DNA is very similar. Isolated, alienated men and women who feel disconnected from society, who are longing for purpose and community and status. They find it not always, but often increasingly online, where they're given a script, a very simple script, good versus bad. Blame this person for your life being miserable. They're fed this romantic ideology that if you do X, Y, and Z, things can get better. And then you move up, like you said, like a gamer, you rank up by saying the right things, doing the right things. You are given status. You're seen as a hero within this in-group. You're given praise. You get a woman. You get kids. Everything's simple, right? It's a radicalization process. And the end game of this radicalization process is the black pill that says the end game is just death.
Yeah, and it's nothingness, right? It's absolute nothingness. And this is also why, what it's interesting to think about how maybe folks who are coming from the black pill side are looking at Charlie Kirk and saying, well, he's still espousing that we still have to have a heterosexual relationship. We still have to have kids. We still have to have a traditional job in order to matter in society. And they reject that idea. And so it's not just about like one, this person's on the conservative spectrum and he's just not, advocating for the white race enough. It's also about he's still saying you have to abide by these dominant narratives or you don't matter. And and they're basically like, screw that, you know?
Yeah, they're screwed. I think that's so important. They're not MAGA, they're not left, they're not Republican, they're not conservative. They don't care about Democrat, capitalist, socialist, democratic socialist, right? Because all of these institutions have failed them. So they're like, you failed us. You're not our God. You're not our king. You're not our dad. It's all going to hell anyway. And Sai, and I'll let you go. I'm sorry if I kept you too longer, but
No, it's fine.
you're such a great guest. And I'm so happy she said yes. I saw this fantastic 8-minute clip of hers where, folks, if you this wasn't enough for you, watch that 8-minute TikTok video she did. Your brain will leak. What's the next step after Black Pill? What is there?
Well, that's the big question. And I think, beyond that, even I do want to sort of like take this back to like what do we do about this?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we really need to address beyond just the polarization of our society and the echo chambers that are created within all of our algorithmic little like K-holes that we can't get out of is inequality and the late stage globalized capitalistic like idea that profit is more important than anything else. It's profit at all costs, because that is actually what has created this over the last like 50 years. Like since we've
Yep.
moved away from Keynesian economics, since we've allowed the power and resource consolidation of these, very few companies, very few individuals, we are that leaches all the resources from the middle class, the working class, the poor, and the government. And so that's if all I have to look forward to in life is working 3 jobs at a warehouse or, a wing stop and trying to eke out a living and eating, very adulterated foods and not having anything else besides passive entertainment, what really are the options besides despair, right? How do you even make any difference in your life, make any improvement in your life? And so all of these, the pablum of like, oh, if you just drink green smoothies, then you're going to be better and the world will be a better place, or buy this product because your identity depends on it, that starts to ring really hollow. And that's why I think like we have to address this rampant inequality. And this isn't just in the US, this is a worldwide problem. So that's
I,
the hard part.
and I agree with you. And I was talking to Qasim Rashid about this, and I was talking to, gosh, I didn't even know. It's Wednesday. I thought it was on Friday. I haven't slept in a long time. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I do.
Every single conversation I've tried to have with people, and even with Democratic officials like Rokana and others, you identified it's a top versus bottom problem. It's the 1% versus the 99%. It's the elites versus the rest of us. It's the billionaires and the oligarchs who want this acceleration and the apathy, to want us sicker, want us more divided, want us working harder with less wages. And then those of us who are desperate and commit crimes, because 80% of people in America who are in prison, America incarcerates more people than anyone else. 80% are poor, which is why there are more private prisons now, detention centers, right? This type of their nihilistic worldview where, well, who cares about everyone else? It's eugenics anyway. The best will survive, the rest will leave behind, and then we'll just take the creme de la creme, the our white children from our genes and our loins, and we'll take them to space, right? The way you can rally most of these people towards a narrative is it's us versus the billionaires. It's us against the oligarchs. It's us against the super corrupt wealthy who are exploiting and dividing the rest of us. Their narrative is there, Sai. Whoever takes the narrative, they win. Mamdani takes the narrative, they win, right? You saw even Trump, anti-establishment in a strange, perverse way. He lied. It's all bullshit, but that's how we got people. The establishment sucks. They all screw you. I'm the one who's benefited from it. Look, I don't pay taxes. Why should I? I'm not a sucker. People are like, yeah, he's not a sucker. F them, F these institutions, bulldoze them. But if you actually have someone who's not a nihilistic type of voracious, capricious piece of shit like Trump, someone who actually stands for something, you can actually build on reform. It's a narrative right there for the taking side. But will Democrats
It
take it?
is.
No.
It I don't think so. Not not the vast majority, unfortunately, you know. And it really is like if you want to go again, going back to the beginning of the internet, a lot of the internet and a lot of what we're seeing now in Silicon Valley was founded on Ayn Rand and her objectivist ideology, and we would have to completely reverse that. We would have to say that altruism is, in fact, a good thing. It is something that all societies should strive for. And we need to found information networks. We need to found products. We need to found systems that will actually promote responsible ecology of meaning. And I think, you know, we might unfortunately have to see a lot of things crash out for that to ever become a viable option.
Yeah, this is generational damage, folks. Generational damage is already done. But I got three kids. I refuse to be a nihilist or apathetic. It's cheap and
Me either.
easy
Yep.
and lazy. And so I have to do whatever limited time I have left as a middle-aged man who is aged far worse than Cy. I was talking to someone yesterday, like, we have to dream of a sunrise that maybe we'll never see, but then inshallah maybe our kids can see. So maybe my job is to be a janitor and clean this shit up. Maybe my job is to be like Hodor from Game of Thrones. You just sacrifice your body against the wall to give your kids enough time to run. But maybe
Right.
if we're lucky, we can plant the seed and be gardeners. And even though if we don't get the fruit in the shade, our kids will. But the pain is here. It's going to be a long walk. The work has to begin, folks. And there is, you ever see Avengers Endgame? Let's use pop culture now in a non-nihilistic way. Doctor Strange tells Tony Stark, using the time stone, there's one way. Out of all the possibilities, there's one way to defeat Thanos. So that's our way. We have to find the way. Sai, this was awesome. I'm so happy that you're so smart and know this and have spent your life doing this, so you can explain this to us. I hope you can come back if this wasn't too painful for you. Can you
Yes.
shamelessly promote yourself?
I'm terrible at that part, like terrible.
I know you're
I
like a child of immigrants. Think like a white man. Think like a Trump administration dude, and
I
promote yourself.
can't. I refuse to put myself into that mental space because I would come out of it having a very bad day. But if you want to read more of what I write, I am moving over to Substack more exclusively from TikTok, given what we're seeing with the algorithm and potentially the sale to Larry Ellison. So please do follow over at Abstract Machines. That's the name of my Substack. And I would really love to engage with anybody who might have further questions or a request even for topics that you'd like to see explored. Just let me know.
And yeah, if there's any topic that you want to do a deeper dive into, and if Sai doesn't mind coming back, let me know in the chats. We're gonna have this up on my Substack and her Substack. There's 1,600 people watching, which makes me very happy because I just want people to be informed. We have kids, folks. You have no idea what your kids are doing. So many, everyone wants to blame the parents. Sometimes it's not the parents. Sometimes
It's
these
not the
kids just
parents'
go.
fault.
Yeah, sometimes these parents are just loving parents. They're working two jobs to stay broke and they have no idea what happened. So if there's anything, any specific, as we find out more, we're going to learn more about Tyler Roberts. If there's any questions, let me know. And then I will shamelessly ask Sai to come back and explain it to me like I'm an 8-year-old.
I'm happy to. Thank you,
Yeah.
love.
This is Cy Cantrell, feral scholar. She calls herself a feral scholar because she's independent. Spent a decade studying tech culture, media studies, media theories, understands the online radicalization process, and also we'll talk about crypto. Actually, I want to
Oh
have you on
yeah.
if you don't mind. Next week. Let's talk about crypto and how
Oh yeah.
crypto is so intertwined with the grift of the Trump administration, with Peter Thiel and these types of dark web movements, right? We still haven't even talked about Silk Road. The fact that he friggin' pardoned the founder of Silk Road. No one mentions this, speaking about the hub of drug trafficking, sex trafficking, violence. And Donald Trump just decided to pardon Ross Ulbricht, the guy who made money off of, the trafficking of children and drugs and weapons. And that's all fine.
Yep. Crypto is super fascinating for those of y'all in the audience. I spent the last 4 years until recently working in crypto. I tend to like to go in to work in industries that I find particularly objectionable, just to be able to see it from the inside, a little bit like an investigative journalist. So I have a lot of events and things that I can relay. And we didn't even get into neo-reaction or Curtis Yarvin or transhumanism or Peter Thiel. And so
Oh, we could do
there's
that
so
too.
much more.
I've been on it. Me and Gil Duran have done 2 or 3 things on transhumanism, but we'll do
Amazing.
it. We'll do a techno-fascism, transhumanism, space travel, Curtis Yarvin,
We can
human.
just do the intersectionality with crypto culture and those things if you want.
Oh, that's great. Let's do that. So let's do that next week. And folks, if you thought this was crazy, you the people who brought JD Vance into the White House, the guy that JD Vance follows, wait till you find out what they want. Wait till you find out what they want. It's we're dealing with modern day eugenics. We're dealing with modern day pharaohs who believe they should live forever, and we're dealing with individuals who are voracious in their appetites and are willing to throw the rest of us to the wolves to achieve their goals. And these are the people who have the ear of Donald Trump. Everything that you thought was bad science fiction, folks, it's here. And Sai will be here to break it down because who am I? You won't listen to me. Listen to Sai. Okay, so we're going to talk next week. I'll email you. Folks, this is
Okay.
Sai Cantrell, scholar. Please follow her Abstract Machine website on Substack. This whole conversation, we've been talking for about an hour. Thank you so much, Sai. I want to talk to you for 40 minutes, but I could have talked to you for another hour. I got to talk to my co-host, Danielle, now, who's waiting patiently. We'll be back in 2 minutes. But folks, Sai Cantrell, Abstract Machine, subscribe to her. 1,600 people are watching. Don't worry, we're going to have this entire conversation up with transcripts in an hour or two. Sai breaks it down, takes the DeLorean from 2000 to 2025 and gives you cliff notes. So at the very least, you have a glib understanding about what we're doing. And then inshallah, you can dig deeper. And then next week, we'll be back talking about crypto culture intersecting with Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and their techno-fascist utopia. I know it sounds cray. This is where we are, folks. Be kind to each other. Be decent. Be informed. And please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Sai, thank you. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Wash. It was great.